expectation.
English, it's much more comfortable, even though it's not my mother tongue, neither. I'm French. And maybe that's why I choose Carrefour as an example, right? A bit of cultural centric here. So I think for the introduction, you got a very good introduction from Isabella on who I am. I've been living in China for the last 15 years. I'm happy to be here. It's two blocks away from the university where I studied, Jiaotong University. And I think I wanted maybe to start with just saying that China was very important for me because I started as an engineer, and now I'm standing here talking about brands and design today. I think it's it's an example of how China has helped transform myself. This conference is about kind of a slowing down of the market and how we transform ourselves. I think China is the perfect place for transformation. As you see on this page, Labbrand, my company that I founded 10 years ago, has celebrated its anniversary last year. It means 10 years here. We know it's a very long time. I had a chance to see the evolution, and I did actually see the change in the last years where many companies and brands start to think differently about their product and their brands. So I think it is a very exciting time. I've been here for the 3 days, most of the time, and I've seen a lot of talks in the previous days on marketing and product innovation and all these fields. And I think what I'm going to talk about today is also something that helps the brands to be smart and sustainable. Because I think there is, I can't not say that I've seen a lot of technicality, and I'm sure it's important to be as smart as possible on how to make big data work for you. But I think there is a book coming, I didn't invent it, called Small Data, coming, like the counter trend. And I think it's also about how we can be having simple way to be strong. And I do believe that brand building is a way to go through the complexity in the simple way. So listen to that. If you think that you're doing great by doing marketing, I think you can do even better by doing greater branding. So I hope I can bring you a little bit of that. Just a little bit of introduction of what we do. In the introduction, it was mentioned that I have a scientific approach to this. I would say most modestly, we listen to consumers and we study culture. And we do that in order to get the basis, to get the knowledge to build, to find the customers, to define new brands, to create new brands, and also to inspire new products and new services innovation. For strategy, brand strategy, it's a broad word. I will share with you a little bit of insights of what I learned in the Chinese market, in all these works with many different brands, be it foreign, be it Chinese, actually. One thing that is very interesting is that it's very hard for for most of my Chinese clients to decide a positioning, to be comfortable with choosing a direction, sticking to it. Maybe because there is too many opportunities on the market, maybe because of another reason, but I tend to see that as Western brands in the last 10 years, they try to compensate maybe their lack of access to the market, to the channels, slower reactivity by being more strong on choosing a positioning and being more using it as a program. In the years to come, now we've seen the change. There is a big pressure. Remember the first presentation on the first day from the teacher from Jiangnan University. There is a lack of brands in China. Everything is strong, good products, very dynamic market, sophistication in the channels, digitalization, but where are the brands? The brands, it starts with people. And right now, I think in strategy for our work also, we will focus a lot to not only give a solution of what's your brand, but also help the companies to cultivate brand thinking, to also get this almost organically in the organization. Also, we work, I mean, this is a very famous product of Labbrand. I mean, just a little bit about naming. I don't come from design. I'm not a designer, so I'm talking about, I learn every day from my colleagues that are here in my teams. I spend a lot of time in research and naming myself. And Labbrand is probably one of the company that many multinationals come to choose a Chinese name, but also increasingly to create alphabetic names as we create new products that go in China or beyond China. Design, of course, and we'll talk about that, covering corporate identity, packaging, and also digital platforms and digital transformation. This is a bit about how we see our different clients. Some of them, I mean, in terms of branding, we'll consider that new is any brand that is focusing a lot on reaching the market will be having a focus that is mostly on marketing. We'll consider it's pretty new in terms of branding. When they start to grow is when they try really to think about the experience, about the brand proposition, and also into innovating into new product and new services, and managing this leadership and staying on top of things. I'll just give you an example. I mean, in the introduction, there is a kind of a couple brands that we've worked with, and here are just a few of them, and just how we put them into this spectrum. Some brands are quite new on the market. Let's say Airbnb are quite new, but in our view, even when they come on the market, they are thinking as a brand that wants to innovate, to keep this leadership, even if they are just coming. We can also see that there is some brands that that are innovating for the market, like Mondelez. I mean, Steven has introduced quite well all the change they've done in the last 2 years in introducing new products. So that's why we put them more into the leading type of area. And now coming to our topic today, packaging design for food and beverage brands. Challenges, and in Chinese is opportunities that you may not expect. So in the introduction, I talk about my background that is not only design, but research, strategy, and all that. So what I'm going to bring is things that maybe you don't see, because this is things that, from my perspective, my kind of different perspective a little bit. So let's accept a little bit to open our mind also, and maybe challenge a little bit our thoughts. Here, in Chinese, Meiye, right? I don't know if the tone is right, but Meiye, right? I don't know if anyone has, what comes first to mind when you read that? What? Club, okay, club. And what do you see? What colors do you see? What atmosphere? Colorful, okay. The colorful is good. So you're in the atmosphere. The word transform kind of put you into an environment already. And it means for foreign guests, we have evil spirit to charm and the night. That's what it means, the two characters. So I was asking, what do you imagine? It's interesting, and I'm glad that I heard colorful, because that's the Chinese name of mixtail, a product under AB InBev. So I won't say that Meiye only give you the feeling of colors. It's also the night and an atmosphere. And we can see that the color of the bottles and the name, they kind of add to each other some dimensions. It's not only about consistency, it's also about articulation. I will tell you a little bit more. What do I mean by articulation? For me, design is a little bit like this scene. It's a bit like a dance. It's a little bit more flexible, active. You can have VI in the logo, you can have VI on the packaging, you can have VI on a key visual. You have many touch points, and it's also changing in different situations. Also, for me, naming, or the verbal identity, the name, is more like a tiege, like more like a ring, or wedding ring, or proposal ring. It's something more concentrate. Only 2 words, only 3 words. Maybe sometimes it's a tagline. It's a bit longer, but it's a concentrate. It can't say everything. It's not as complex as a dance, but it's very important. It's very important. So for me, for branding, let's think about like these 2 dimensions. When we think about packaging, I think many of you think about the visual, the shape. It's very important. But are we thinking enough about the words, about the connection, about that, and how they play together? So that's one of my first ideas I want to bring forward for you to think. Are you thinking enough in your daily life, in your daily work on packaging? Are you thinking about these 2 equally, importantly? So this is just an example of visual identity and the verbal that we just discussed. So I'm talking about this topic also because in the last year, I got many requests. I mean, you've seen on the previous slides brands like Labbrand that do kind of chips or kind of snacks. You'll see another case study coming later on. There's many brands asking me, do we need to do a packaging for China? I mean, I'm talking about foreign brands, the importing brands. Many reasons for that. I mean, there is something nice about being exotic, right? We have all this channel, Tmall Global. We have for this access of product directly. There is also almost the code in China that putting a label on the back is almost recognized as imported product. And then if you start changing the packaging for China, it's sometimes, some brands say, better don't touch it, is good. I mean, just like that. But many of them are still thinking that doesn't necessarily work that well because it creates a kind of a distance. You don't connect with the consumer. So we can see a few examples like Evian. Some of the bottles on the market have the Yiyun, the brand name on it. It's maybe easier because it's on the sleeve. So maybe it's easier. Of course, if, and I had a discussion about some of you that have a packaging like a Tetra Pak, the change and adding another one is kind of a little bit complicated, but we can see also for Nestlé, for this brand about Youhuo, that is actually, it seems totally in Chinese. Actually, the other side of the bottle is in English, but the adaptation is very strong. Right? So if you are hesitating, I mean, I would say we had a very interesting input the other day, even like a provoking thought. Should the packaging be very standard, almost like white, because in the new era that is very important for shipping, you know, shall the packaging just be white or what? Actually, my answer to this question is that think about that your packaging is still a very important contact point when you interact with the product, when you use the product. And that's where you can memorize the name of the product. This is the search for Baishi versus Pepsi in blue. So this is the amount of search. And you can see that the search, if you look for a product either on Baidu or if you look at the product on Dingdong, to find the product, most of the Chinese will use a Chinese name. So one simple answer is that if you're hesitating, you can still privilege to add more Chinese on your packaging. Okay. So we go now into another journey about the localized packaging. And I'm going to introduce you 3 levels. So these 3 levels, if you're doing a brief to your agency or thinking about something new, this is what I believe are the 3 elements you should be having in mind to tap opportunities. First, there is something I call Chinese culture. For me, Chinese culture is something that is all around us. It's in all the events, the festivals around us. And somehow, you can, of course, mix these three ideas together. But there is some occasions when the Chinese culture alone create a totally different space. And we'll see this in a few examples coming. The brand idea, of course, is what we've been doing all the time. We get a brief, and it's all about, like, is it consistent with the attributes? We've got this idea before. And there is something, and I will come into this because there is more to that brand idea right now I want to share. It's very important insights coming. And I think for the category positioning, it's all the tactical game to stand out, to be a little bit more fresh. And I would say this is a little bit more tactical. So you can see these three levels as like coming from almost like Chinese culture can create you opportunities that are totally new, that can transform the brand idea. I will give you some examples. You see some brands are doing that. And then you can execute on the brand idea, or you can be very tactical. And these are three levels. They're all very important, but you can try to break down your thinking on these three levels to make more effective choices. So those are packaging that we see in the Chinese culture with the red, with the tiger. It looks a little bit like gimmicky, but we see that. This is another one for new weds or family. Of course, if you see these codes, they have nothing to do with Nutella. I mean, there's nothing to do with the brand. It's totally going away from the brand, but it still happens on the market. And this is, for me, my favorite example in this is Häagen-Dazs. I don't know if anyone from Häagen-Dazs in the room, but you should know that if you close all the Häagen-Dazs store in China, Häagen-Dazs will still have half of its business on the mooncake remaining. So this packaging that is nothing to do with the Häagen-Dazs imagery or this type of packaging, this is half of the business. So that's why I'm saying that sometimes you can think about your design in a much more provocative or different way. I mean, trying to tap into the culture, it can even transform the brand meaning, because maybe now Häagen-Dazs in China also is much more part of the family ritual, or some of the even, of course, we know dating ritual in China, also the product innovation, but it's very interesting. So Chinese culture, obviously a very important field for innovation. Here, I'm getting into the second point, that is brand idea. Brand idea here, I don't know if you recognize maybe who is behind this picture. I mean, maybe that's part of the general design culture. You will see the artist. Those are packaging that have been taken by Andy Warhol in the 60s, 70s. And among those packaging, is there anyone that you prefer, that you found more beautiful? Anyone has one favorite one that stands out? Well, if you don't like them, it's okay. Actually, what I want to say is these designs, they come from an era in the 60s, 70s, where everything was functional, reduced. And basically, there is one that is a little bit more beautiful, maybe is the Brillo, that was done by an artist, a painter, that still kept a little bit of form into it. And what I want to say is today, maybe China has been through the very efficient technology, and even if it has started a bit later than the 70s, it's not happening after the Second World War. Right now, I believe there is a big trend into making the things more aesthetic, more beautiful, less about functional. And this was actually, this bottle is also, I guess, in the nice design part outside the conference room. So we can see this design from Nongfu Shanchuan. It viscerally talked to me. I mean, I don't know why I like it. I mean, it's beyond rationalization. So when you see that, you maybe just go to try it, or you want it. I mean, and this is just one very beautiful example. You can see the refinement. It's nothing about simplicity. It can be very complex. It's maybe beyond the rule of design. It could be very complicated, but it triggers my heart. I want it. So it can trigger the first purchase. You get interested into the brand. So I'll come back to that. But the second idea of brand idea, second kind of area into brand idea is interaction. Consider this is the second moment of truth, the truth that is still there. We buy a product and interact with it. So I took the Dove because it's all about indulgence, silkiness, and look at the design of the product. Everything makes me feel this experience. The packaging, the visual cues, maybe even how it shines. Actually, it goes even beyond the shape of the chocolate, the silkiness, everything. So this is beautiful, beautiful design for the interaction, really getting the brand idea perfectly into the product. But now there is more than that. So this is also very important, is that it is important. So we've seen that you can be just beautiful and your heart will move, people will buy, will try. If your interaction of the product is very good, people will buy again and again. But there is something more now. Is actually, everyone is sending right now, half of you are on WeChat, getting a little bit distracted from the talk, and you may take a picture and share it like something funny, and maybe you will take the Xiaoming because this is a bit funny, right? I mean, it's refreshing. So this is not only something for sharing, it's also a great brand idea because it taps into a trend, but it's also an amazing disruptive thing that people want to share with others. So this is what I'm thinking. There is something in design we need to think about now, is how our design is going to travel. Not only how it is going to fulfill the brand brief. There is another opportunity here, and I think it's very important, very fundamental. Here, we're getting into a more tactical part. I mean, you can see like traditional packaging of fish, packaged fish, and kind of sudong, the type of product, kind of frozen food. Here is just an example of more tactical improvement of category positioning, when actually your packaging looks like the others, but it's just a little bit better. It's just a little bit rejuvenated. So this is more tactical, and we should not mix these three levels. If you want to do great work, you have to be very good at this level. You have also to be very good at the previous levels. You can think big. So this is just my suggestion also for you to kind of open also your mind, or kind of also, if you want to be brave, you can step up and try to climb back to the opportunity. So here, small video.
He's here. See the man in front is going to be very important.
所以在这一次的方向。
你是我吧？
What have you seen, right? So this is about a brand called Go-Go Squeeze. Maybe you've seen it in some small channels around Shanghai. Actually, this brand is a $500 million brand in the US, one of the most rapidly growing brand in the world. It's for kids, and it's a pouch with apple sauce. Actually, we had to find a way to call it in Chinese. And because it talks to kids, to moms, I mean, it would have been also quite, I mean, even the name Go-Go Squeeze, I mean, in English is very engaging. Think about the moment of interaction that I was saying, like this design, this name, also is linked with the moment of usage very much. We had to convey, of course, the healthiness, the happiness, the joyfulness of this brand, and the clients found that it was not enough to just put a label behind. It will be like really putting a distance with the kid. So we had a work on also finding a Chinese name for this product, and you can see the Chinese name used like Ti. I mean, I like this repeating name because Go-Go Squeeze, and squeeze is Ti, right? And also, I mean, think the biggest brand in beverage, Coca-Cola, it's Coca-Cola, is repetition again and again. There's also something about addictive, so you can also achieve this type of effects through the name. And this is more like the playful, and there is a bit of Chinese-ness because the importance of the fruit, the wholesomeness, knowing what it is. It's a pretty new category. I mean, the competitors are not necessarily using so much these visual clues. I mean, most of them use maybe also fruits, but not in a way that is so playful or engaging. And of course, you will have some additions like coming from France. It's still imported because we added the Chinese name. The Chinese name is slightly bigger than the English name, but we needed to compensate to make sure that people still trust. There's a lot of trust needed for product. It's not a copy or what, so we have still the flag and explanation even more clearly about what it is, Pingguo Ni. And so that's just an example of adaptation of localization of product and how visual and verbal plays together. So now I'm just going to do a little bit this journey again, but just through the names. I mean, we talk about Carrefour just now. I mean, I was given just an occasion to talk about good names. Here we talk about brands that just leverage so much the Chinese culture when finding the name. Tibaili, I mean, is actually one example. We have Bashi. It's all about auspiciousness. Doesn't mean anything with the brand. I mean, why is it so happy? I mean, there's nothing happy in this design. I mean, this is just 8 luck, whatever it is. I mean, why not? It seems to work. So, I mean, Chinese auspiciousness, maybe a little bit Lao Qi, right? I mean, a bit old. I mean, you don't want these names maybe anymore. Maybe it's outside of trend, but it still exists. I found this, actually I was looking for some design. I mean, I don't know if this product is very successful, but I was trying to find something. This is from Nongfu. And I was like, trying to find something beautiful just from the name, you know, something that gets me interested. When I saw Chapi, I found like, wow, this is interesting. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure I'm going to buy a bottle of this because, I don't know, it feels intriguing. Maybe because I study maths, I don't know, but for me, it was anyway something I was connecting with. I think it's pretty maybe quite universal. Just an example of, here is again about interaction. We've seen the packaging of Dove that is very much on the interaction. Here we have Duoduo. Actually, it's also about fun. It's about a lot, about munching, and you have a lot about the kind of occasion, and the name is actually reflecting that. Here is about sharing. I think this is kind of an adaptation from American campaign that was first launched in 2012 when there are bottles called Rob, Jan, or whatever, but when they wanted to get the idea in China, there's too many names in Chinese, so they could not print that many. So instead of that, they had like interesting names like Yanmer or whatever, like Lao Xiong, Shen Dui Shou, or whatever. So they have like all these names on the bottles. And this is actually totally made for this new trend of sharing. I mean, you offer it to someone, people saying it's really, oh, it's interesting. I mean, it's a mix of campaign and brand identity, but this is a place through verbal to get the people to share about the design. And this is like today, you can see in the elevators in Shanghai, this is a new campaign from KFC, which a lot of the verbal on the pack is based on the 4 different kind of occasion. People that like to go to cinema, people that like skating, brand sharing. And the last one is more about the tactical positioning with extensions like Pepsi Max. You just add a word to make the product a little bit more fresh, I mean, a bit more differentiated from the competitor, more tactical. I'll finish this presentation with another final kind of case study with Beilang. This is, I'm sure you're familiar, they have been advertising quite heavily. I mean, we've been surprised by how much actually they invested. So this is another example where the Chinese name in a new product is very prominently present. And you can see that it changed a little bit the idea of the brand. Belvita in English, well, nice life. I mean, if you read it a little bit. In Chinese, bei is about baking, is about a little bit more about how it's made. A little bit more giving a hint of where it comes from. And long, the brightness, but also the good health, the benefit, you know, that the goodness of it. So the Chinese complements well the English word, and also the long has this sunniness, this shininess in it that is in the middle of the sun. This brand is a breakfast brand with nutrition studied and providing all this goodness in a value proposition. Okay, so now I'm just going to summarize a few takeaways. Maybe it's good also just for you to rethink. So my first point is that the balance between the Chinese and the English brand name on packaging is a topic. I believe that from my exposure to this market that more and more brands are going to go for a localized packaging with English wording instead of labeling imported products. So especially as brand develop, they also plan sometimes to produce in China. So it's a first step for them to get more closer to market. This applies for localized, for brands, mostly for foreign brands, of course. Leveraging visual and verbal together. Remember that the dancing and the ring, I mean, the two together get you married. So think about it in that way. The impact of Chinese culture. What I want to remember the case of Häagen-Dazs. You can do something that is not on brand, maybe. You can do it, and you can be extremely successful. Leveraging Chinese culture, maybe it's not always so radical. You can still integrate it in a brand, but dare to think to leverage Chinese culture. That's where you can get a big, big win. The power of beauty. This is a trend, worldwide trend. I mean, I've seen it in different places, in the US, in Europe, and everything, and in China it's true too. We are going back to something more beautiful, or more, and without reason. Somehow, nature has created a beautiful environment for billions of years, and we found it beautiful. We are sensitive to that as humans, so beautiful, I mean, I don't dare to say we are all very analytical. Myself, I'm very analytical, but beautiful is good. You can go for beautiful also. Very important trend. I mean, this is definitely many big FMCG brands, design directors, global directors also think about that right now. Designing for sharing. Make your design something that can travel, that can be shareable, that can travel, think in different ways. Think almost like a tattoo. A tattoo for a brand could be, I mean, those are those type of heritage, and now with the digitalization, it can go into very, very new ways. So you can find this presentation on if you get on this WeChat platform. It's ready for you. There is a code for that. So the code is FBIF, or in Chinese, 视频饮料. 视频饮料. It's a good. Okay. Good. Any questions?
OK， 谢谢我们的主委。
Well, thank you so much, Vladimir, for that wonderful presentation. Do you have any questions that you want to ask him? He may have a million worth of answer for you.
Is it possible to show the last slide on key learnings, the top 5 that you've shown? Yeah. So my question is, while they're preparing for the slides, in the world of e-commerce where people's attention are much shorter than before, among those 5 key elements that you've mentioned, how would you rank them in terms of importance? Because I think I really love the idea that you take time to look into a design, but oftentimes manufacturers or marketers don't really, or consumers don't really take the effort of looking into something very long and digesting each item. So would like to get your perspective on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. I think maybe one way to answer is to create time and the interest. Well, I mean, actually, I think what people want now is to have a currency. They see design. If I take a product, I feel this as I want to get something out of it. Of course, I will drink. I mean, if it's a drink, it will refresh me. It will quench my thirst, whatever. But if on top of that, I get an equity that I can share digitally, I mean, that creates time and attention. So I would say, really, with your question about digital, I'm tempted to go for the 0.5, which is totally different. It's something that is creating new opportunities, and I think is a way, I mean, also compatible with many of the, let's say, marketing schemes at the moment that are about, creating interest within communities to spread them. This is going to facilitate this type of work.
好，谢谢卓文珍先生。大家还可以有提一个。
Thank you. There is a chance for one more question. Okay, thank you so much, Vladimir. Thanks for that presentation.